There comes a moment, usually quiet and unannounced, when you realize something has shifted. People listen differently now. Some speak over you. Some assume you no longer need to be heard. And strangely, that is when dignity begins to speak louder than anything you could say. After your 50s, life has a way of removing the noise, not gently. It strips away titles, urgency, and the illusion that explaining yourself will earn respect. What remains can feel uncomfortable at first, even painful. But inside that discomfort is a deeper power that younger years could never access. You may remember a time when your voice carried weight simply because of position, a job title, a role in the family, a sense of relevance tied to usefulness. Then one day, you notice fewer questions directed your way, decisions being made without your input, younger people speaking with confidence, sometimes without listening. It can feel like being slowly erased while still fully alive. That feeling cuts deep because it touches dignity, not ego. Dignity is not about applause. It is about being seen as whole, as someone whose presence alone carries meaning. When that recognition fades, the instinct is to speak louder, to explain more, to prove that you still matter. Many do this. They interrupt, they correct, they repeat stories hoping someone will finally hear the wisdom inside them. But something surprising happens to those who pause instead. They begin to realize that dignity does not need to chase attention. It changes shape with age. It becomes quieter, slower, more solid, and when allowed to mature, it becomes unmistakable. There is a kind of silence that comes from exhaustion, and there is another kind that comes from clarity. The difference matters. The first is resignation. The second is strength. In earlier years, words were your tools. You negotiated, persuaded, explained, defended. Your voice was active, sometimes urgent. It had to be. Life demanded movement and response. But later, something inside you learns when words lose their value. You notice that people who truly respect you do not require constant explanation. They feel your steadiness. They sense your boundaries. They hear what you do not say. This is not withdrawing. It is refinement. Dignity in later years is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not argue for space. It occupies space naturally. Think of someone you've known who carried this quality. Perhaps an older relative, maybe a former mentor. They did not dominate conversations, yet when they spoke, the room shifted. Even silence around them felt meaningful. That presence was not accidental. It was built slowly through years of disappointment, restraint, and inner negotiation. Dignity grows when you stop performing for approval. One of the hardest lessons after 50 is realizing that respect cannot be forced. No amount of explaining your past sacrifices will make someone value you more. No detailed recounting of experience will awaken curiosity in those who have already decided not to listen. This realization can sting. It may feel unfair. You earned your voice. You lived the years. You endured what others have not yet faced. But dignity asks a different question. Not how do I make them hear me, but who is worthy of my voice. This shift is subtle, but life-changing. When you stop offering your words to rooms that do not value them, your silence becomes selective, and selective silence is powerful. People begin to notice not what you say, but when you choose not to speak. They sense the weight behind that choice. There is a common fear that silence equals weakness, that if you do not assert yourself, you will disappear. But disappearance and invisibility are not the same. You can be quiet and deeply present. You can say little and still command respect. In fact, after a certain age, restraint often speaks louder than confidence ever did. Because restraint signals self-trust. It says, "I know who I am. I do not need to convince you." This is especially true in family dynamics. Adult children may speak quickly. They may believe they understand the world better now. They may dismiss your caution as outdated. The temptation is to correct them, to warn them, to insist. Sometimes that's necessary. Often it is not. Dignity knows when to let experience teach what words cannot. It knows that advice given too freely loses its value, and it trusts that those who are ready will come asking. Workplaces reveal this lesson even sharper. Older professionals often find themselves sidelined. New systems appear. Younger managers bring new language. Efficiency becomes the focus, not depth. You may feel invisible in meetings, your suggestions acknowledged politely, then ignored. It hurts because your contribution is not theoretical, it is earned. Yet dignity does not beg for relevance. It adapts quietly. It chooses moments carefully. It offers insight sparingly, with precision. And when dignity speaks after a long silence, it lands. There is also dignity in stepping back without bitterness. Not everyone can do this. It requires confidence rooted deeper than recognition. It requires knowing that your worth does not expire when your visibility changes. Aging challenges the way society measures value. Youth is praised for speed. Older age is often misunderstood as slowness. But slowness, when intentional, is wisdom. You see patterns now. You notice emotional undercurrents others miss. You sense when a conversation is no longer honest. This awareness changes how you engage. You stop reacting. You start observing. Observation creates calm. Calm creates authority. This is why dignity feels louder later in life. It is no longer tangled in urgency. It is anchored. There is another layer to this transformation that few talk about: grief. Not only the grief of loss, but the grief of becoming. You grieve versions of yourself that were once needed, roles that once defined you, energy that once came easily. If this grief is ignored, it hardens into bitterness. If it is honored, it becomes depth. Dignity comes from making peace with what has changed without diminishing what remains. You do not deny aging, you integrate it. You allow yourself to be both experienced and evolving. There is grace in that acceptance. It shows in how you walk into a room, not hurried, not apologetic, simply present. People feel that presence before they understand it. They sense that you are not trying to impress them, that you are not competing, that you are not afraid of silence. This makes others lean in, because in a world full of noise, grounded presence is rare. Another quiet shift happens in how you handle disrespect. Earlier in life, disrespect demanded response, correction, defense. Later, dignity chooses distance instead. You learn that not every slight deserves acknowledgement, that some behaviors reveal more about the speaker than the target. This is not avoidance, it is discernment. You no longer chase fairness from those incapable of offering it. You conserve your energy. Energy becomes precious after 50. You become aware of how much of your life was spent managing other people's emotions, soothing, explaining, adjusting. Dignity is the moment you stop shrinking to keep others comfortable. It is the decision to be calm without being cold, firm without being loud. You set boundaries with tone, not tension. You do not announce them, you live them. And people adjust, or they don't. Either way, you remain steady. This steadiness is deeply reassuring to others, even if they never say it. Children feel safer around it. Friends feel grounded by it. Even strangers sense it. Because dignity does not demand attention, it invites respect. There is also dignity in choosing solitude differently. Loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness feels like absence. Solitude feels like space. As social circles shrink with age, there can be fear. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of becoming irrelevant. But dignity reframes solitude as selection, not rejection. You are no longer surrounded by people simply because time allows it. You choose presence more carefully. This makes relationships richer. It also deepens your relationship with yourself. You hear your own thoughts more clearly now. You are less distracted by external validation. You know what drains you. You know what nourishes you. This self-knowledge changes how you speak. You stop filling silence with noise. You let moments breathe. Silence becomes a companion, not an enemy. And in that silence, your dignity becomes unmistakable. One of the most profound shifts is how you handle being overlooked. It will happen at gatherings, in conversations, in decisions. There will be moments when you are not consulted. Earlier, this would have wounded deeply. Now, you observe the moment. You notice the feeling, and you choose your response consciously. Sometimes dignity responds with a gentle word, sometimes with a raised eyebrow, sometimes with silence, but it never responds with desperation. Desperation is loud. Dignity is grounded. Grounded people do not rush to be seen. They trust that those who matter will notice, and those who don't were never meant to. There is peace in that realization. It does not come quickly. It is earned through disappointment, through being misunderstood, through learning that being right does not always mean being heard. When dignity matures, it stops needing to win. It prefers to be whole. Wholeness is quiet. It does not fracture itself, trying to fit into spaces that no longer align. This is why dignity becomes louder than words later in life, because it is no longer competing with insecurity. It is no longer layered with fear. It stands alone, and that presence is felt. People may not articulate it, but they trust it. They sense that you have nothing to prove, that you are not swayed by trends, that your values are settled. This creates a subtle authority, not power over others, power within yourself, and that is the kind of power that endures. There is also dignity in forgiveness that no longer requires reconciliation. Earlier in life, forgiveness was tied to repair, to restoring connection. Later, forgiveness becomes internal. It is about freeing yourself from carrying old weight. You release resentment, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace. This inner release changes your demeanor. Your face softens, your tone steadies, your reactions slow. This calm is not passive, it is strong. It is the calm of someone who has survived storms and learned where to stand. You may notice that younger people sometimes seek you out quietly, not for advice they think they already know, but for how you carry yourself. They are drawn to your steadiness. They may not say it, but they feel it. This is dignity teaching without speaking, modeling without instructing, being without performing. It is one of the greatest gifts of aging. You become a living example of emotional regulation, of restraint, of resilience, not because you planned to, but because life trained you, and you listened. There is dignity in accepting your pace. Your body may move differently now. Your energy may fluctuate. Rest becomes necessary. This is not weakness, it is wisdom. You no longer treat your body as a machine. You listen to it. This listening changes how you move through the world. You are more deliberate, more present, less frantic, and that presence is felt by others. They sense that you are not rushing away from yourself, that you are not fighting time, that you are aligned with it. Time respects that. So do people. In the end, dignity is not something you claim. It is something others feel in your presence. It is the way you listen without interrupting, the way you respond without reacting, the way you hold space without needing to fill it. After your 50s, dignity becomes louder because words have done their work. They have taught, they have defended, they have explained. Now they rest, and what remains is essence, presence, calm, clarity. You no longer need to announce who you are. You embody it, and that embodiment speaks volumes long after the conversation ends, long after the room empties, long after the noise fades. Dignity remains, steady, quiet, unmistakable. And in that quiet strength, you finally feel at home within yourself.